Portions of this homily are based on an article available on the UUA website titled "The Original Water Ritual." The elemental pieces, the core needs of the human experience, come up again and again in human spiritual imagery. The sun, the earth, the air, and the water. A newcomer to the UU Church recently asked me why, when Unitarian Universalists are not always Christian, we participate in a water communion. It made me realize that the water communion, to those whose roots are in Christianity, may speak to baptism in holy water coming from that tradition. And for some Unitarian Universalists, this might be reassuring, a connection between their faiths. But for some Unitarian Universalists, including this newcomer who asked, it clearly struck a chord of discomfort. What I walked away considering was how fundamental and elemental to the human experience water is. Water is part of so many creation stories. Water is part of so many holy rituals. Water is part of the spiritual process for so many cultures. Many faiths have traditions that date back thousands and thousands of years. The annual celebrations are sometimes figurative reenactments of events that happened. Not just rituals and text, they are sights and sounds and sensations. This is the bitter herb on the center plate, the bright gold of the Christmas star. As a young faith, or as a young fusion of two old faiths, when we gather to speak of tradition, they are rarely traditions that are ours, so we look to the roots. The water communion is slightly different. In 1980, which may sound like a long, long time ago to some of you in the room, and like yesterday to others, there was a gathering of Unitarian Universalists called the Women and Religion Continental Convocation of Unitarian Universalists. Unitarian Universalists have always liked long names. There were two women attending, Carolyn McDade and Lucille Shook Longview, who were tasked with creating a worship service for the gathering. They could do anything that they wanted. And when you exist in a space with traditions and rituals, you have freedom, but you also have a sort of outline. Like when you're coloring in a picture, you still get to pick what colors go where. But when you have a blank page, you have a lot more freedom and somehow more responsibility. As McDade and Longview looked at their blank page, with no idea what a gathering service for Unitarian Universalists might look like, they imagined a ritual that, quote, spoke to our connectedness to one another, to the totality of life, and to our place on this planet. They closed their eyes and imagined an entirely new, inclusive way of symbolizing spirituality, and specifically of women's spirituality. Asked later why they chose water, they said, "Water is more than simply a metaphor. It is elemental and primary, calling forth feelings of awe and reverence, acknowledging that the ocean is considered by many to be the place from which all life on our planet comes from. It is the womb of life, and that amniotic waters surround each of us prenatally. We now realize that this worship service, was for us a new story of creation. We chose water as our symbol of empowerment." What sensations or perceptions come to your mind when you think of water? Perhaps the buoyancy of salt water, the smell of the creek, the feel of water rushing between your fingers, the pressure and heat of a long shower. McDade and Longview called their service, held in East Lansing, Michigan, coming home like rivers to the sea. They asked women to bring water from their faraway homes, and the women did. Women showed up with water gathered out of the Rio Grande. Women showed up with rainwater gathered from Maryland. Women showed up with water scooped from the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. At the ritual, the women slowly poured their water into an earthenware bowl as each bearer described its significance. As the ritual continued, Carolyn McDade says, water deepens in meaning for us, just as water deepens during its long and winding journey to the sea. McDade and Longview did the hard work of imagination, but they then gave their outline to other Unitarian Universalists, who were also hungry for rituals that were created uniquely in our faith. And now, each fall, at Unitarian Universalist churches across the nation, people come with water from their sacred places, from their travels, from their homes. It is within that pattern, that outline, that we gather here today. The water we collect each year is used to water our memorial garden, but before that, some of it is held back, strained and sterilized and stored, and then used to begin next year's water communion. Our homecoming, our returning to this space, is not limited to one annual Sunday. Each time we come together, we are a new version of ourselves, of our shared community. We carry with us new stories, new experiences. We walk into this space both different and fundamentally the same. Yet during the homecoming service each year, we uphold the process that happens organically each time we open our doors. We hope that you can join us this Sunday for the homecoming ritual. But if you cannot, please know that your presence is met with gratitude each time you enter here. May your presence in this building always be a homecoming.